Hello, my dear subscriber. Today, I'm going to talk to you about what fasting is, what intermittent fasting is, what benefits this type of diet brings, what negative effects it has, who it's recommended for, and who it's contraindicated for. We will talk about the major mistakes made by those who use this eating protocol in an attempt to become a healthy person. It's not just about trying to lose weight. First and foremost, it's a scientific approach based on biochemical processes that explain its benefits. And today, if you watch this video until the end, we will break down in detail what intermittent fasting is, how to do it correctly, and most importantly, how to do it safely for your health. The main problem of humanity, which has always existed and still exists today, is hunger. Today we're talking about how to give up food, but in reality, just look at how many starving countries there are, how many starving children. And this topic, on the one hand, seems to be useful, and what we're talking about is necessary. But for many, it probably sounds funny because they're thinking, where can I even get food? So the question is, what happened that for all of human history, people struggled to find food, and now we're thinking about how to properly refuse it? But unfortunately, it just so happened that in the past, we used to hunt for food, we used to obtain it, food had to be earned through hardship, but now you can just go to the store and buy everything. And naturally you can see at night, but I don't see very well. And just imagine in ancient times when there was no lighting at all, how dark it was at night. It's not like now in a big city. Have you experienced being in the forest at night? It's completely dark and you can't find or catch anything. And that's why most meals were tied to our circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm is the rhythm of our body as humans, which tells us that at night, my friend, you need to sleep, and during the day, my friend, you need to be awake. And now night falls and your appetite wakes up. And that's simply because, for example, you're worried or stressed. You take the cake out of the fridge and eat it. Naturally, that's not very good. Naturally, and everyone already knows this, it's better to go to bed hungry at night. And if we're only now talking about what our parents taught us and told us, actually science has moved forward. There is a study that shows there is a theory of thrifty genes. The theory states that our eating habits, like not eating at night and eating during the day when it's light, are important. Traditionally, in those latitudes where we could survive without modern advancements, our genetics are programmed so that we shouldn't eat at night. Studies show that the tendency to eat at night or late in the evening increases the risk of heart attack, stroke, diabetes, insulin resistance, and cancer. We're not discussing health here. The reason I decided to record this video in the first place is what matters. Actually, is because when I watch or sometimes read some posts myself, and a lot of people, seemingly educated people, say that all diets work the same way, but it all comes down to calorie restriction. Well, that's just nonsense. That's just absurd. It's not just about calorie restriction. It's also about the hormonal responses of our system. And it's silly to say that the same amount of calories you consume, for example, as buckwheat or as ice cream, is the same. In the end, it will give the same result. That's not true. And intermittent fasting is not just about reducing calories. Yes, of course, it has its advantages. If you're a food lover, or as I call it, a gut enthusiast, if you love to eat, it's a good way, for example, to reduce your stomach volume. And simply, you'll want to eat less. Because why do we feel hungry? Not only because, let's say, something is happening with the glucose in your blood, but also because of the action of, for example, mechanoreceptors. The stomach likes to be full, the intestines too. Let's say you don't consume enough fiber or enough protein, and because of that, you constantly feel hungry. Although, in fact, simply by increasing the amount of fiber in your intestines, you will reduce the amount of hunger you feel throughout the day. And there are people, actually, I'm one of them, who don't really feel hunger. I eat just because I have to. And very rarely, I let it get to the point where I actually feel some hunger. Although right now, in general, I'm following this kind of eating protocol. So the most important thing you need to understand is intermittent fasting and all types of hunger. It's not just about restricting calories, it's about the biochemical consequences and changes, mostly positive ones, that happen in the body if you do this. So, if someone tells you that it's just calorie restriction, and you can achieve the same results if you just consume the same amount of calories throughout the day, that's not true. What types of fasting are there? Well, the main types that I've listed for myself. We're talking about intermittent fasting right now, because that's what I practice. It's when there's a part of the day when you don't eat and a part when you do eat. I'll discuss various fasting patterns. One is complete fasting, where I don't eat for 2 days straight. There are followers of this approach, but I don't really like it. It doesn't suit me as a long-term nutrition protocol, and it has consequences. This is because you need to ease into it and out of it, and you need to get used to any nutrition protocol. If you get used to intermittent fasting fairly quickly, then with a nutrition protocol like, okay, I'll fast once a week, your body will still treat it a bit like stress. What does it mean to ease in and out? In the early days of my career, working at a multidisciplinary clinic providing emergency care, we had many elderly patients, particularly grandmothers and grandfathers, brought in when they go on some kind of diet, just because they read somewhere that fasting is good for you. And so just one day, they stop eating. And for 2 or 3 days, they don't eat, only drink water, and then they start eating again. Common complications include gallbladder colic and intestinal obstruction. This may require hospitalization and surgical treatment. That's why with fasting, especially for elderly people and especially if there are any health issues, you need to enter and exit it gradually. Skipping meals once, twice or thrice weekly without understanding your body's needs is not the right approach. This can lead to consequences. There is partial fasting, meaning what you are used to calling partial restriction. For example, you can exclude flour-based foods or sweets from your diet. This is also in principle a type of fasting, meaning you are excluding a certain type of food from your diet. There is also the concept of long-term. I recently saw a YouTube video of an emaciated monk who was just skin and bones, according to the description. And, as it turned out, this is a kind of spiritual practice for them when they eat only a very small amount of food, just the bare minimum, while still maintaining physical activity. Their minds work absolutely normally. He was almost mummified. Practically just skin and bones, but at the same time he was talking to a girl, saying something to her and gently patting her on the head with his hand. So there is this kind of fasting. Let's think about where to start. Well, first of all, you need to understand that all types of intermittent fasting have consequences, both positive and negative. And most importantly, if you have chosen this eating protocol, you need to understand if you are doing it to lose weight, of course, you should first make sure that there is no underlying endocrinological issue or any other problem. If you started this eating protocol just to lose weight, then this is definitely not for that. It's meant to make you healthier, but not to lose weight. The second thing I recommend, besides checking your hormonal system, is of course to check your hepatobiliary area. That means just doing a basic ultrasound and seeing what's going on with your gallbladder. For example, checking if there are any bends or stones there. Because if you have a tendency toward gallstone disease, then actually a diet protocol where you don't release bile from your gallbladder for a long period of time isn't really suitable for you. There are ways, and I have clients who practice even with a kinked gallbladder. There are conditions where the gallbladder has a congenital kink and bile doesn't flow well from the gallbladder, and they have a high risk of stone formation, and they often develop sludge. You know, it's like a jelly-like clot. It's clearly visible on ultrasound. If there is a kink and you still decide to practice intermittent fasting, then the patients I have used choloretic agents. That is, they drink coffee during the day and use choloretic agents. Due to this eating protocol being followed more frequently than just once a week, if you switch to a protocol, let's say 18 hours of fasting and 6 hours of eating, you will eat like this every day, and your predisposition will turn into your illness. Who else shouldn't do this? You shouldn't do it if you have diabetes. If you have diabetes, this eating protocol isn't for you. Type 1 diabetes is also not for you. With insulin resistance, on the contrary, this protocol is for you. What's the fundamental difference? With insulin resistance, basically most often it's a reversible condition. It's a condition associated with a metabolic change in the body. When you have to release more insulin to normalize your blood glucose levels, a very common mistake people with insulin resistance make is that after watching advice from fitness experts, well, of course, they give good advice, but it's not suitable for everyone. They start eating from containers. Remember, if you have insulin resistance, eating by the clock every 2 to 3 hours when you have 6 to 8 small meals a day actually isn't very suitable for you. In fact, breaks between meals are necessary. That is, for people with insulin resistance, this kind of eating protocol is ideal. For people with diabetes, on the other hand, this eating protocol is not suitable. You know, it's like when people ask if going to the sauna is good for you or not. With the sauna, everything is very simple. If you are sick, if you already have arterial hypertension, if you already have thrombosis, if you already have varicose disease, you shouldn't go to the sauna. But if you don't have any of that, the sauna is the perfect way, if you do it right, to maintain your health, to stay healthy. And you could say for prevention. This healthy habit can prevent cardiovascular issues and complications. What fasting protocols exist? It comes down to two numbers. The first number is the time you don't eat, and the second number is the time you do eat. There are different protocols. There's a protocol called the warrior diet, I think. 1 meal a day. 1 meal a day means eating only 1 meal per day and fasting for the remaining time. Well, I don't know. Personally for me, although Dr. Berg says apple cider vinegar is the healthiest in this video. While it's healthy, it also has downsides. Huge actually, because you have to fit everything your body needs to get into one meal. And that's pretty hard, to get the right amount of protein, the right amount of fats, the right amount of carbs, and for the food to still be highly nutritious. And that's impossible because your stomach will shrink. Over time, you just physically won't be able to eat all of that in one meal. And in the end, you'll be forced to take a bunch of supplements, vitamins, and minerals. Because with the amount of food you eat, you just won't be able to consume all of that at once and you won't be able to absorb it. So it's debatable. As personally, I don't recommend eating just once a day. Regarding the other eating protocols, as you understand, the first number tells us how many hours we have for eating, and the second number tells us how many hours we have for fasting. For example, 6 hours and 18 hours. The second option is 4 hours and 20 hours. The most optimal, in my opinion, and according to scientific research, is the one that combines ideal parameters for both benefits and effectiveness. That's 16-8. And 16-8 is best suited for people who want to make this a lifestyle. And plus, it's actually convenient. Why, for example, do I practice 16 hours of fasting and 8 hours of eating? First of all, it's easier to give up all sorts of junk. In the morning, I don't spend time on breakfast. I eat in the evening, and accordingly, I come in the evening. I can easily go the whole day without food. I don't carry any containers with me, and I don't have to think about preparing food in advance. In the morning, I get up, dress, brush my teeth, and go to work. I come back without thinking about food all day. Just think about how much time all these lunch breaks, and snacks take up. You lose your productivity. So actually, it's also very convenient in terms of time management. As for drinking, of course, you definitely need to drink water during fasting. There are proponents of dry fasting. There are such methods, but I don't really like them. Because along with water, what leaves our body is not just water, but urine. And what is urine? Urine is dissolved waste products that leave our body. And how do these waste products leave us? Through sweat, through the intestines, through urine. When you don't drink, your blood can decrease in volume due to lack of water intake, as it doesn't circulate as actively. That's why it doesn't remove urine from your body either. And waste products aren't eliminated as effectively as they actually would be. That's why the best detox is to let your kidneys, your liver, and your gastrointestinal tract do their job. Because no matter who tells you about all these cleanses and detox programs, the best detox program is to have a healthy organ, to have a healthy liver. Just don't throw unnecessary junk into it and let it do its natural job well. We administer medications and chemotherapeutic toxins to patients, and the liver eliminates them. People go on week-long drinking binges, and the liver handles that too. So when you try to cleanse your liver with some miracle drugs, it's all nonsense. Just don't damage your organs and let them work properly. The optimal schedule, in my opinion, is 16-8, 16-8.
When are breakfast, lunch, and dinner served? That's a quick question based on the current time.
Listen, well, there are different 16-8 schedules. There are people who like to have breakfast. And you can basically, like I wake up at 6 in the morning. For example, I have breakfast, let's say, on the 16-8 schedule. 8 hours, that means I should finish eating by 2 in the afternoon. This approach and schedule has its advantages. What are they? You burn calories during the period when you consume them, and you might store less of them, and maybe you'll utilize them better. Because in the morning, some of our hormone levels are higher. And of course, if your goal is specifically weight correction, not just health, then it might be better to shift your meals to the first half of the day. Well, or whenever you are active. Because I have clients, some of them are involved in stock trading. for those working evening or night shifts, such as at a bar. Their active period is in the evening, not the morning. In their case, morning meals are appropriate. Basically, there are people who eat during the day, for example, from 12 to 6 or 8, but they don't eat in the morning or in the evening. Because of the nature of my work, since I start pretty early and my first appointments begin at 7 in the morning, it's hard for me to eat this way. So yes, maybe it would be healthier to shift it to the first half of the day, but it's more comfortable for me to do it in the second half of the day. It's very important to listen to your body, to pay attention to what feels more comfortable for you and what suits you best, because tests are good, but first and foremost, you need to feel in your own body what works for you personally. What are the benefits? There are scientific studies that say when you introduce a food pause, during this period, the body adjusts and stops focusing on creating new cells. That is, the process of creating new cells slows down and the body readjusts and looks for energy sources through autophagy. Autophagy is the consumption of your own cells. Which ones? Old ones first and pathological ones second. And what happens during this period? You fight more actively against all your protein and intracellular debris and against bad cells. And it's no coincidence that they say this kind of eating protocol significantly reduces the risk of developing cancer. We recommend two main eating protocols to our patients who, unfortunately, have had this illness in the past. The first is to basically reconsider your food. Many people start eating indiscriminately when they begin using the intermittent fasting protocol. That's not really right. You still need to eat properly, but eat properly within a certain period of time. So your food should be more on the alkaline side. That means more fruits, more vegetables, less fried food, and less flour-based food. And besides that, you also need to fit all of this into a certain period of time. Besides the benefit of reducing the risk of cancer, what else do we get? Insulin sensitivity increases, that's one. The level of bad cholesterol decreases, that's two. The systemic inflammatory response in the body decreases, and this can be recommended to absolutely everyone who wants, first and foremost, to extend their life. You know, this diet is also called the elimination diet, meaning a diet that eliminates disease.
Is it correct that if you choose the first option, 8:16, and start breakfast at 8 in the morning, then all eating should be finished by 4 o'clock? And in the evening, for example, if you have a workout, you have to go home hungry after the workout and go to bed like that?
I'll put it this way. I easily gain mass while on intermittent fasting. You can still maintain your daily caloric intake. Naturally, if we're talking about competitive bodybuilding or professional sports, well, of course, maybe someone will tell you that with intermittent fasting, when you eat for 2, 4, or 6 hours a day, you can gain mass or prepare well for tournaments. That's nonsense. But in the context of an average person or regular amateur athlete, you can gain weight, you can lose weight, but still, this diet is about health, not about sports. You shouldn't try to look for a universal diet. If there was a single super cool diet, everyone would be on it. Different things work for everyone. Not everyone is suited for intermittent fasting. They just can't. Naturally, the more you understand about the benefits, about how we get a huge cellular response, how our mitochondria, for example, become healthier, how the antioxidant protection in the body becomes better and stronger, and how there are fewer free oxygen radicals on this kind of eating protocol. These are, of course, advantages. Advantages because the average age of my audience, you guys, as I see, is about 35 to 40 years old, and there are some younger people too. This is the age when, unfortunately, when we talk about some serious diseases like cancer, for example, we already understand that it's not somewhere far away, but it's actually quite close. And in fact, 2/3 of cancer cases, 2/3 develop in people over 60 years old. But whether they develop at 60 or pass you by depends. It will depend on how you lived that period of your life when it seemed like everything was still forgiven. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually get forgiven. It's like with melanoma, for example, there's a cumulative effect. It adds up over the years, and the more often you get sunburned, the higher the chance of developing melanoma. And it's the same with nutrition. It's not like you start smoking today and get lung cancer tomorrow. It's not like you start drinking heavily today and develop cirrhosis tomorrow. Our body has a tremendous capacity for compensation, and its compensatory functions forgive us for a lot. However, all this can return to trouble us when the inevitable aging processes begin. Because there are two main factors that increase the risk of developing cancer. If we don't take gender into account, since 98% of our audience are men, being male is more common. Bladder cancer is twice as common, and age is another factor. Do you want to stay healthy? At 60, please, you should really start taking care of yourself from your 20s or 30s. Let's think about how to fast properly. First of all, determine the purpose. If the goal is just to lose weight, well, this probably isn't the best eating protocol because it's really about health. If you want to lose weight, then maybe it's a low-calorie diet, maybe it's a protein-carb alternation, or maybe a keto diet might work for someone. Maybe you just need to increase your physical activity and create a bigger calorie deficit, but not torture yourself with diets. The second thing is to choose the right method. It could be intermittent fasting. This is what I was talking about, for example, not eating for 18 hours and eating for 6 hours. The third point is consulting with a doctor. I recommend an ultrasound of the hepatobiliary area to make sure you don't have any contraindications in this regard. Second, rule out problems with insulin and blood sugar. Check your glycated hemoglobin, check your insulin, and check your blood glucose. Consider getting biochemistry tests, including urea, creatinine, alanine aminotransferase, aspartate aminotransferase, gamma-glutamyltransferase, and bilirubin levels. Who shouldn't do it? There are lists of people who shouldn't restrict themselves. The first are diabetics. Yes, these types of nutrition protocols are not really suitable for diabetics. People under 18 for some reason, but I think that's a very abstract restriction. Pregnant women, breastfeeding, eating disorders. If you have psychological issues, address those first before starting this nutrition protocol. It is also not very suitable for people with diverticular disease. This is when there are hernial protrusions on the intestines. It is not suitable for people with acute conditions or problems, for example, some acute erosions. And when a person thinks, if I start fasting now, it will heal faster. No, this is definitely not for you. You need to heal your problem first, cure it, get rid of it. You can't do it with severe dysbiosis. If you are prone to constipation or, on the contrary, to loose stools, first figure out the causes. Get a stool test, consult a gastroenterologist, and then begin this nutrition protocol. What is important to do during this nutrition protocol? Personally, I constantly drink water. I have my own daily amount, and everyone has their own. In summer, it's one amount. In winter, it's another. In winter, you need less water because you sweat less compared to summer when you sweat more. If you work out that day, your body's fluid consumption increases even more. The guideline is simple. It's actually the color of your urine. And if you're drinking enough, it should just be light. So what can you drink throughout the day? You can only drink products that don't contain calories. Many people say only water, but that's not true. It's not just water. You can safely add electrolytes because there are some intestinal diseases that cause electrolyte imbalances. For example, even after intestinal resection. In the past, you can have tea, you can have water, you can have coffee, and actually you should have coffee because it helps stimulate and activate intestinal peristalsis. It helps you get rid of excess sludge, among other things, because it helps you stay more toned. Because sometimes, unfortunately, when people start this diet, not everyone immediately feels lightness. Some people feel weakness. They're used to eating all the time. The first 2 weeks of induction are particularly challenging as you adjust to a new routine. While it's ideal to start gradually, it remains a difficult process. At first, you eat in a 50-50 interval. Half the day you eat, half the day you don't. And then you gradually increase the interval of time when you're not eating, and you get to 6 hours. Feeling comfortable eliminates discomfort. The biggest mistake beginners make is wondering, how can I not eat? At the start, I was extremely hungry, feeling it intensely in my stomach. However, that sensation fades over time. Now I don't eat and I have no desire to. The most important thing is to train your body. You can communicate with your body and you can develop habits that won't be stressful for it anymore. It will become a way of life, which will also bring a lot of benefits. As for sports, how to train while doing intermittent fasting. Did you know that you can shift these windows? If your workouts are mostly, for example, in the evening, then it would probably make more sense for your eating window to be shifted toward the evening. And let's say you have an eating window from 6 in the evening to midnight. This doesn't mean eating only once during this period. It could be 2, 3, or even 4 meals. You eat before your workout. You train, you have energy after eating. You eat after your workout, recover, and eat again. About 3 hours before going to bed. I recommend adjusting this window around your physical activity if it's intense enough. And that's why, because of my evening workouts and the activity that continues for me in the evening, it's also more comfortable for me in the evening. I really can easily not eat during the day, but it's pretty hard for me not to eat in the evening. Because of this, I even sometimes start waking up from hunger. For me, actually, I'd be really interested to hear about your fasting experiences. What kind do you practice? I'll say it again, everyone is different, so please share your fasting experiences. What method has worked best for you and why? Because the more useful information you share, the more people will read it and someone might find something helpful for themselves. So don't be shy, write your comments. I read them too, and maybe I'll find something new for myself as well. I'll learn something. Friends, we're here having a friendly conversation with you. More numbers, more links, and more scientific research. And some interesting facts, for example, about the longest fasting cases. I'll post it in my Telegram channel. I'll leave the link to this Telegram channel below this video. So go ahead, subscribe, read, watch, and benefit from it. Have a great day, everyone.